Yes. Good evening, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Fort Wayne Community Schools Board of Trustees. Great to see such a big crowd here today. We will begin, as we always do, by standing and reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call of members.
Good evening, Glenna Yale representing District 2.
Tom Smith, 3rd District.
Maria Norman, member at large.
Ann Duff, member at large.
And Steve Corona is out of town, and I think Jordan is still recovering from his broken foot. Okay, I think he was hoping to be here tonight, but must not have been able to make it. And my name is Julie Hollingsworth, elected from District 1. To my far left is Janet Doherty, the clerk of the board. Good evening. And our superintendent, Dr. Winnie Robinson.
Good evening.
Good evening. So we have a couple of special guests with us today, and they are Representative Dan Leonard and Representative Phil Giaquina. So they have a resolution that they would like to present. So the microphone is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Julie. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been here one time before for a board meeting, and it was a similar situation to this, presenting a House resolution. In the House of Representatives, we actually, Phil and I together, serve on a committee that oversees all of the resolutions, and these are passed unanimously by the House of Representatives here in the state of Indiana, and they are entered into the records in the archives of the state of Indiana. This particular one is to your school superintendent, who we are proud to say was Superintendent of the Year in Indiana, and we were kind of holding this off because she actually was in the top and final 4 of superintendents for the United States. So I think there's a lot to be proud of at Fort Wayne Community Schools, and Dr. Robinson, we are absolutely thrilled to death to be here tonight to present this resolution. I'm going to let Phil say a few words, but I want to share with you one thing that has stuck in my mind for a long time from Dr. Robinson. You know, we differ in politics, we differ in how we fund things, we differ in philosophies, but Dr. Robinson has always been here to educate the kids. And one of the things she told me when I first started representing a portion of Fort Wayne was, you send us what you can. We'll do the best with what you give us to educate the kids at Fort Wayne Community Schools. And Dr. Robinson, I appreciate that philosophy and that attitude so much you'll never know. And it's no wonder you were one of the top 4 in the country of our superintendent of schools. So thank you so much.
Well, Representative Leonard, I hear a few other things. Superintendent Robinson. Congratulations again. We are, as Representative Leonard said, our whole delegation is so proud of you and the job you do. Of course, I know you will not take all the credit. You're going to credit your board. You're going to credit, obviously, the teachers, and most importantly, you're going to credit the students who every day work their darndest to make all of us at Fort Wayne Community Schools very proud. And we were keeping our fingers crossed for you out there in Nashville, Tennessee, I believe. But in our hearts, you were really the best in the winter. And so with that, if you want to step on down. And again, this is a resolution.
You both are in trouble, you know that.
I've been to the principal's office.
But never to the superintendent's office. So, yeah, we just want to present you this, or we'll step out here, maybe get a couple of pictures, but before you can't go anywhere. Before you do, again, congratulations on behalf of the Speaker of the House, Brian Bosma, Representative Leonard, myself, Speaker, Senate Pro Tem David Long. We just want to recognize you officially. This will be in the official journal. And as a resolution just honoring you as the State Superintendent of the Year, and in our minds, the National Superintendent of the Year. Congratulations.
You're right. You don't get to be nominated for Superintendent of the Year without having absolute phenomenal people you represent. One of the proudest parts of that whole Nashville experience was having board members there, having members of the cabinet there, and having Steve Brace there from the Teachers Association. We don't get anything done in this district alone, and it was just a pleasure to represent not just only Fort Wayne Community Schools, but there were superintendents from all over the state of Indiana. We had a good time in Nashville, celebrating the fact that we don't get a lot of attention in Indiana, but there are a lot of great things happening for children, and so to me, that's what this represents. They're both in trouble, but I do appreciate it. I'm already working on the legislative agenda for next year.
Anything in May coming up?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm working on that too. You want me to send it to you?
Oh, yes.
Excuse us. I'm sorry. Just a minute.
Teenager when you need him.
Why don't you go wide? We're not there. Sideways. Look at me. Oh, that's just a different perspective. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir.
Thanks very much, Representative Leonard and Representative Giaquina. And Dr. Robinson, congratulations.
Thank you.
A well-deserved honor.
Thank you.
So we also have some visiting guests from Gera, Germany. It's recommended that the board recognize students and a teacher from Gera Goethe Gymnasium in Gera, Germany, who are visiting Northrop High School this week and Fort Wayne through April 6th. Through Sister Cities International, Gera, Germany, and Fort Wayne have enjoyed a sister cities relationship since June 1992. Since that time, there have been many exchanges between the two cities as artists, musicians, government officials, and students have participated in special events in both communities. The sister school relationship between Gera Goethe Gymnasium in Gera, Germany, and Northrop High School goes back some 25 years. Other sister school relationships include Northside High School and Gera Zabel Gymnasium and Blackhawk Middle School and Gera Stachus Regionalis Forzentrum. I'm sure I
Close enough.
butchered that. While here, the visitors from Germany will spend time at Northrop High School and tour Fort Wayne attractions. So if you'd please come forward as your name is read. Students, Max Miller.
I'll have to say welcome.
Lucia Borsatz. Nice meeting you. Chiara Dannenberg.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Nice meeting you. Annalena Heiser.
Thank you.
and Dana Wagner, chaperone. And also here is Northrop Principal Jason Witzegruder. Nice meeting you. Nice meeting you.
Want to talk about all the things that you are doing.
Thank you.
Because it is phenomenal. Keep on coming.
Or if one of the students would like to, they're welcome to.
Come this way, let's get a picture. And then I want you to hear all the things the Norfolk community is doing.
Okay.
So, all right. Okay.
High school student?
We'll be all right.
They're all so tall. They've grown tall in German.
Yeah.
So tall.
Is that it? Would you like to come this way, and Mr. Witzegruder will talk about what's going on. Don't be ashamed, come on.
First off, we're really pleased to be able to have these young men and women with us. And this one here had to inform me that she's a police officer, not a teacher. So, good company, she's good here. So, it's a really cool opportunity to be able to bring young men and women from a different country to our school and to be able to participate in some of the activities that we have going on. Today, I know that they were at the zoo. They had a nice dinner last night. They had an opportunity to tour our school, come to meetings like this and see how we operate our schools, and get a chance to interact with our students and live with a host family, spend some time next week as well with those host families, and a little bit over our Easter weekend. So a really neat opportunity for them, and we're just really pleased to have them with us and hopefully learn from them as well. So, anybody want to say anything? You don't have to. But you're welcome. Thanks.
Enjoy your visit.
Dick Conklin, who is connected with Rotary, and Faye Robbins are part of the Sister City program. So we have some very strong relationships. So appreciate Faye's efforts and Dick Conklin's efforts in making sure this keeps going.
That's great. That's a great opportunity for both cities.
Right.
And schools. So now we have Scholastic Art and Writing. These are the Dick Blick Art Educator Award. It's recommended that the board recognize the Fort Wayne Community Schools art teachers from Memorial Park Middle School and Southside High School who are awarded the Dick Blick Educator Award as part of the Scholastic Art and Writing competition. As part of the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards, local organizers select educators to receive the Dick Blick Educator Award. This year, 3 Fort Wayne Community School teachers received the award. The decision this year was based on growth in participation and achievement from the students. Memorial Park increased their awards from 17 in 2017 to 39 this year, and Southside increased their awards from 2 to 7. Both schools also had American Visions nominees. A total of 6 teachers will receive the award this year. As part of the award, teachers receive a $500 gift certificate. Yeah, cool. So please come forward as your name is read so that we may congratulate you. From Southside High School, Jennifer Sloan. Along with Principal Carlton Mabel. And from Memorial Park Middle School, we have Nalani Kiesler. Amy Clark. And Principal Brad Crozier.
All right, we have to get close together. Family, you can get in the aisles if you want to. It's a big deal. You need 2 rows? Nope. Okay. Wide one. All right, wait, somebody take it. Get it? Is that it? Thank you.
So I'm just curious, does anyone want to say anything about, we have 2 pages of award winners coming up. Okay, looks like no. We're going to leave it all to me. So next we have a large group of students to recognize for winning both regional and national awards for scholastic art and writing. The Scholastic Art and Writing Awards have recognized student achievement in visual arts and creative writing for 90-plus years. This year, there were 4,310 entries across the region, and 377 gold keys were awarded. Gold key winners went on to national competition, where 3 Fort Wayne Community School students received national silver medals. Fort Wayne Community Schools had 55 students who won regional gold or silver keys, and some students won multiple awards at the regional level. Lily Dukes of Memorial Park Middle School and Martin Bourgeois of Southside High School were American Visions nominees in art. Bourgeois, along with Rihanna Batchelder of Northrop High School and Kaylee Weichert of Blackhawk Middle School, were also awarded national silver medals. So please come forward as your name is read so that we may congratulate you. First, from Northside High School, Jareem Bailey, silver key in art. Miranda Bradley, gold keys in art. Sydney Eckert, silver key in art. Carol Galicia, gold and silver keys in art. Margaret Hickey, gold and silver keys in art. Jarvey Johnson, silver key in art. Logan Johnson, a gold key in art. Kayla LeGros, a gold key in art. Anna Martinez, a gold key in art. Alexis Merkel, a gold key in art. Leah Rich, silver key in art. Nay Say, a silver key in art. Stefan Towns, silver key in writing. Cameron Winker, silver key in art. And Alan Winker, teacher. Sherry Shepard, teacher at Northside. I'm sorry?
Like at the north side?
Right, right. And Amanda DeBally, also a teacher at Northside, and Northside principal David West.
Okay, two rows. Karen, hold up. You have to stand up so we know not to move. Is that it? Oh, one more. Congratulations.
Blake? Okay, and now from Northrop High School, Isabella Anderson, silver key in art. Rihanna Batchelder, a gold key in art. Kaya Chambers, a gold key in art. Doris Floyd Elliott, a gold key in art. Bailey Hahn, a silver key in art. Michaela Kallenbeck, a silver key in art. Alexis Landis, a silver key in art. Andrew Mung, a silver key in art. Bethet Nino, a gold key in art. Jasmine Smith, a silver key in art. Kenneth Thompson, a silver key in art. Katana Vapuchan, a gold key in art. And the art teachers from Northrop, John Platt, Angela Smolik Platt, and Principal Jason Witzegruder. Move to the center and we'll get a good picture.
Parents, stand up so we can know when you're done. Is that it? Thank you.
Congratulations.
I know you want to go home and do homework, so.
Go home and draw.
Thank you. Thank you, parents.
And from Snyder High School, we have August Grube, gold and silver keys in art. Rachel Scott, a gold key in writing. And Snyder teacher Pamela O'Reilly. And Principal Nicole Chisley.
You get to stand between the two of us. Is that it? Yeah. All right.
And now from Southside High School. Sierra Haywood, a gold key in art. Martin Bogwa, a gold key in art and an American Visions nominee. And Angela Quintanilla, gold key in art. Jennifer Sloan, teacher, and Carlton Mabel, principal. Congratulations. Okay, and now we have from Blackhawk Middle School, Veronica Johnson, a silver key in writing. Madeline Martin, a silver key in writing. Alexis Shepard, a silver key in writing. Sydney Steinlich, silver key in writing. Kaylee Weichert, a gold key in writing. Is there one not on there?
They have one that's not on our
I
list.
know, that's what I meant.
But we don't know if she can. Here you go. She can read those, perhaps. Oh, there it is.
You did the best you could.
Leah Fear.
Oh, I'm sorry. And Leah Fear, teacher, and Kara Froning, principal at Blackhawk Middle School. I thought we had one more that we had.
Got it? Thank you.
Congratulations. And from Memorial Park Middle School, Danny Bowers, a silver key in art. Diana Diaz, a gold and a silver key in art. Lily Dickty, a silver key in art. Trevian Dorset, a silver key in art. Lily Dukes, a gold key, a silver key, and an American Visions nominee in art. Grace Gilly, a silver key in art. Harmony High, a gold and a silver key in art. Gwendolyn Jackway, a silver key in art. K.I. Lonnie, a gold key in art. I'm sorry, Kaylani Johnson. Lilith Lujin, a silver key in art. Olivia McFerrin, a gold key in art. Ren Moore, a gold key in art. Diego Munoz, a silver key in art. Hunter, is that Nego? New? No? Okay, no. I thought there was a yes or no. Is that a yes? A gold key in art. Amia Russell, a gold key in art. Annalise Tester, a gold key in art. Coral Toe, a silver key in art. Tia Townsend, a silver key in art. Lauren Walda, both a gold and a silver keys in art. And teachers from Memorial Park, Amy Clark, Nalani Kiesler. Those names sound familiar. Ladies are busy.
Award winners.
And Memorial Park Principal Brad Crozier.
2 lines here.
It would be cool if they could flash their artwork up when you introduce them, because they're getting recognition for
Nobody moves
artwork.
the parents sit down.
And in this digital age, there's no reason why we can't. Right, but I'm just saying, that's
gotcha.
all cool stuff. Either that or have an art exhibition before the,
Yeah. That's probably even better.
just, yeah, because,
Yeah.
you know, but at least something, just to say gold key and art gold key,
Is that it?
which is nice.
Is that everybody? You know, parents are not proud of you, you do realize that. Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Bye, Beth.
You know, if I could, Madam President, one of the things that I hear a lot when I travel across the country is that the first thing to go in districts are the arts. And one of the things that we have never given up or cut back on, no matter what, are the arts, because look at the talent.
Yeah.
Arts and, right,
The
arts
arts
and music.
and music.
Yep.
So those teachers give their all, and that's why that many students are recognized. They realize that talent. So thank you for supporting that. That's a lot of children tonight to honor.
It's okay, like you said, it is worthwhile. So next on the agenda, we have the consent agenda, and these are items that come to us every meeting. They include approval of the minutes from the last meeting on March 12th, which board members have already seen. They include vouchers and payroll, vouchers for the period ending March 26, 2018, which are kept on file for public view for like 7 years. Payroll for the period ending March 2nd. And then there's the personnel report that's rather lengthy tonight. There was an addendum that we got to us with a lot of next year's administrative changes. Dr. Robinson, was there anything you wanted to mention from the personnel report?
Yes, please. One of the first things is we are probably 2 months earlier than we normally have done this. And we made a concerted effort to get administrative placements done earlier, because sometimes we do it in the middle of the summer and it's impossible for people to be able to relate to the people who are going to be administrators in their buildings. The other thing is, as we made some moves throughout the district, the domino effect caused us to have administrative positions in the assistant principal ranks also. So while I won't call out all the names, I would like to read the names of the principals. And one of the things I'd like to do is maybe for the next board meeting, have a slight reception before, because it's impossible for you to see and know all of these people. And so I think that would be a good thing for us to just plan to have assistants, principals, all the people on this list come so you can start trying to put names and faces together. So apologize, we can't really get that done tonight. We've got 3 people who are not here this evening. We sent them to a conference, so when I get to their positions, I'll kind of let you know who they are. Justin Arkland. Is Justin here? Okay. Justin joined us in 2003. He's been a 5th grade teacher. He's worked at Forest Park, an administrative intern at Haley. He served as an assistant principal at Harrison Hill, was most recently the principal at Waynedale, and we appreciate the fact that he will be at Bloomingdale. Thank you very much. Christy Hoffner is one of the people we sent to a conference. She will be at Waynedale, and she began her career as a special ed teacher. She joined us in 2003. She also has been an intern. She's been at Washington, Holland, Adams. Her most recent assignment was the assistant principal at Forest Park, and she, as I said before, will be the new principal at Waynedale. Mary Canary is here, not on the trip. Mary will be the new principal at Irwin. Mary has been with us since 1989. Yay. She did take a leave of absence, but she came back. She has been at Lincoln. She also served at Forest Park, and she was appointed the principal at Lindley in 2013, and has accepted the assignment at Irwin as principal. Matt Megan is one of the people we sent on the trip. He's at ASCD, which is a curriculum conference. He will be the new principal at Brentwood. He joined us in 2004. He's taught at Forest Park, Weiser Park, was an administrative intern. Notice a lot of these people came through the administrative intern ranks. He was at Croninger. His most recent assignment was assistant at Fairfield. He will be replacing Sarah Wortman, and he will be at Brentwood. I know Jennifer Nichols. I saw her. Jennifer will be the new principal at Lindley. You have to stand up, honey. We are. You have to stand there long enough for people to stare at you. I forgot to tell you that. I'm sorry. She began her educational career in 2007. She taught art and drama at Blackhawk. She's been at Northwood. She left us briefly, but she came back. She's been the assistant principal at Price and will assume the principalship at Lindley. Thank you. You can sit down now, Jenny. She has the most fabulous glasses in America. Sarah Wortman, who is not here this afternoon, she will be the new principal at Forest Park. Sarah started her career in Garrett. We won't hold that against her. She came to Fort Wayne Community Schools. She's worked at Weiser Park. She served as an administrative intern. She was appointed the principal of Waynedale, and then she moved to Brentwood, and now has accepted the assignment at Forest Park. That was all elementary. Middle school, Zach Harrell, I know he's here. Zach will become the new principal at Blackhawk Middle School. He joined us in 2001. He was a math person at Memorial Park. He's been a building coach. He was also an administrative intern. In 2014, he became the assistant principal at Portage. He has recently served as the assistant principal at Blackhawk, and he will be taking over as the principal at Blackhawk. At the high school ranks, Chad Hissong, who should be here. Chad will be assigned and has been assigned as the principal at Snyder. He began with us in 1989, not here, but in 2000, not here. He was the principal at Elmhurst. He's been the principal at Northside, and his most recent assignment was as the director of the Student and Family Support System. Adam Swinford, where is Adam? Adam will become the new principal at Southside. He joined us in 1998. He's been a PE teacher at Indian Village, Geyer, Tolles. He was the athletic director at Wayne. He went to Northwood, Miami, and has been the principal at Miami since 2013. He will now be the principal at Southside. Central office, you will see why we have vacancies at principal positions. Kara Froning, I know I saw Kara, she was here with her babies, is now a new secondary area director. She began her career as an English teacher, not here, but she started with us in 2004. She's been at Blackhawk, Jefferson, Northwood, and her most recent assignment was as the Blackhawk principal. Carlton Mabel also will become a secondary area administrator. He began his career in 1992. He served as a special ed teacher. He's been at Miami. He's been at Wayne. He was an administrative intern at Blackhawk. He was also named as the assistant principal at Blackhawk. He has been the principal at Wayne, the principal at Southside, and will begin his duties as the secondary area administrator. Thank you, Carlton. Jennifer Mabel, and she is related, is taking over as curriculum director. She's also my clicker for this evening. Thank you, Jennifer. She began her career in 1996. She's taught second grade at Washington. She was a facilitator at Geyer, which is now Tolles. She's been at Lane. She's been the principal at Nebraska. She was also the principal at Lane, the principal at Kikianga, and has served as a secondary area administrator. Now will accept the curriculum position, which is her true passion. And Get Nichols, who was attempting to make sure I didn't mess up all of the student recognitions, Get has a new title, Chief of School Leadership, and very specifically, we chose that title because we're trying to make sure that K-12 leadership is consistent, and to also enhance the relationship between, we always say that graduation starts in kindergarten, and we've got to be more mindful of those connections. She started her career in Oklahoma. We don't hold that against her. She joined us in 1994. She was a third grade teacher at Price. She came just as I was leaving. In 1999, she was also an administrative intern. She was the principal at Brentwood. She was named an elementary director in 2007. And in 2016, she became an assistant superintendent for elementary education. I think I tried to say that as quickly as I can. One of the things, it's been a a hustle to try to get all that done. But one of the things that we hear from teachers as they're trying to make decisions about what teaching position they're going to take, they do want to know who's supposed to be in charge of the building. So I appreciate all the effort of everybody to get that done quickly. And as I said before, there are lots of other assistant principals and other people on this list, too numerous to name, but I hope you will do that reception so you can get to put names and faces together. So thank you for allowing me to do that.
Okay, congratulations, everyone. So do we have a motion and a second on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Ann. Thanks, Maria. All those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we have no old business, so that brings us to new business. And the first is an IDOE acceleration grant. It's recommended that the board approve the application for and acceptance of a grant from the Indiana Department of Education for STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math initiatives for a total of $100,000. The grant is to support schools that have an interest in accelerating, scaling, or starting STEM school-based activities. Fort Wayne Community Schools will use the grant to fund the creation of a computer science curriculum using Microsoft's Minecraft for education. This competitive grant was written by Jack Bird, Director of Technology, and supports Fort Wayne Community School District Goal 1, Achieve and Maintain Academic Excellence. So questions will be addressed by Jack Bird. Do we have a motion and a second?
So move.
Second.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Maria. So Jack, I'm curious. And so this is, there's a state law now, right, requiring all schools to provide some sort of computer science education, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
The CS standards are now a part and will
Or the
be a part
science
of the future.
curriculum, actually, probably.
That's correct.
Okay. And if I go to code.org, will that be Minecraft for education? Will it show me some things to do in that?
Yes, code.org uses some of it uses Minecraft.
I thought so.
For education.
Okay, so for parents, students out there, if you're interested, curious, want to be able to help your kids or find out more about what they're doing, you can go to code.org and get a head start or try it yourself.
It's an excellent site.
Yeah. I've done it in years past. I haven't done it this year yet. I got to make a note to myself. Note to self, code.org. Okay. Any other questions?
Just, Jack, we'll be more deliberate. And one of the reasons we went after the grant is to try to get a jump start on what a curriculum should look like. Because one of the things that will be happening is that the state will have questions specifically tied to curriculum technology.
Correct.
On the 4th and 6th grade test, Jack?
Correct, 4th and 6th.
So that's coming. So part of what we want to make sure we do is get a jump start on that to figure out how that's going to mesh with all the other things we're trying to do, because it will be something that the state will be testing.
That's correct.
And is that going to affect next year?
Correct. We would
Okay.
be putting things in place for next school year.
Okay.
And we're not quite sure what the test looks like, so
No.
we just know it's coming.
Probably
so
no
we
one
better,
else
yeah.
knows either, so.
So we better get it in shape. Thank you, Jack.
Okay.
One
Thanks.
last question,
Yeah.
just, Jack, can you just refresh our memories as far as how we stand as far as the technology in order, to be able to offer these curriculums in all our science classes?
Sure. Right now, we are at the tail end, and the next two items that you have in the board will finish out our second year of our 5-year plan. We're at the end of that. We will have a 1-to-1 ratio for students and devices. Right now, we are at a 1-to-1 ratio in grades 3 through 5 with laptops, and we are working, hopefully at the end of this school year for next school year, will be 1-to-1 in our K2 with iPads. And then we're still building capacity at our middle schools and high schools.
Great, that's very helpful, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Thanks, Jack. Okay, so all those in favor of approval signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, so next item we have, it's recommended that the board approve the purchase of 170 HP 650G3 laptop computers from Process of Indianapolis for $144,389. This purchase of 170 student laptops is for new tech programs at Tolles and Wayne. 60 go to Tolles and 110 go to Wayne. The 110 laptops for Wayne New Tech require special specifications for the software used in their curriculum. Fort Wayne Community Schools was able to secure pricing that was below General Services Administration pricing. Indiana law does not require public bidding for purchases made at or below GSA pricing. Funding for the laptops will come from the Common School Fund. And any questions can be, again, addressed to Jack Bird, Director of Technology. Do we have a motion and a second?
Move for approval?
Second.
Thanks, Glenna. Thanks, Tom. Okay. Questions? Okay, all those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we have and these I think are the laptops that you were referring to earlier, right, Jack? This is the purchase of Lenovo ThinkPad Yoga laptops. It's recommended that the board approve the purchase of 2,195 Lenovo ThinkPad Yoga 11E and 625 Lenovo ThinkPad 370 laptop computers from Process of Indianapolis for $1,570,400.10. The purchase of these laptops represents the final purchase for the second year of the 5-year technology plan that ensures students and teachers have current technology to support instruction. Fort Wayne Community Schools was able to secure pricing that was below GSA pricing. Indiana law does not require public bidding for purchases made at or below GSA pricing. Funding will come from the Common School Fund and School Technology Advancement Account. And Jack is still here to answer any questions. So do we have a motion and a second?
Move approval.
Second.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Ann. So, any other questions? Okay, all those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that brings us to the close of our business. And now we have a report from Dr. Robinson, Shaping the Future of Fort Wayne Community Schools. And everyone should have a copy of the PowerPoint in there.
This is part 2 of the public work session we held last week. And one of the reasons we had the work session is to do some, at that time, we did some legislative work. So much has happened with the legislation, mainly them not quite completing their work, backing off some pieces of legislation. We didn't think it made a whole lot of sense to have a legislative review tonight. We will have one. We'll bring Justin forward. The governor is calling the legislators back into session in May. One of the things that we are not really clear about are some of the legislative actions they've already taken. For example, they decided they were supposed to next week vote on a new accountability measure and have decided not to do that. And now we're going to still be under the old accountability measure. But one of the things that we want to do, and this is just a precursor, we want to have a conversation with the PTA, and I think there's a PTA meeting coming up, Faye? April 29th. April 29th. And start, what are the messages, what will be the agenda moving forward? Because what we want to make sure is that the PTA gets those messages out to parents so we can start kind of narrowing and being more proactive around what we do for next year, because next year's money. There are still some state committees going on, and I've been asked to be a part of a subcommittee that looks at math from the standpoint of the K-12 and higher ed. So I know enough right now to be dangerous. I don't have a lot of details on that. But just know that as a district, we are still trying to actively be involved in shaping what happens with some of the details, but I don't even know enough at this point to tell you, so I didn't think it would be wise to cover that tonight. But what I want to get to, really, the first couple of pages aren't really going to be the focus. What I want to talk about are some of the very specific kinds of things that have been discussed out in the community at length in terms of some of the organization and some of the staffing issues. Even going back and having some conversations around schedules and classes. So I'll give you the best information that I have. Some of the words aren't on the screen, but I'm trying to make sure that we really almost have a follow-up conversation. The last time we talked, as I said before, I cut out a lot of that agenda. So if you look at the next, this agenda really is going to focus on our vision for learning. Because it's a topic we have been working on for the last 2 years, full-time, trying to figure out how we align, how we describe what we're going to do with learning to what's happening to the state. It's not gotten done because every time we turn around, the state changes another piece of what they want us to do. But I think it's very important that we as a district have a conversation out loud about what learning is. And then the last part will be organizing for success. You see some of the administrative moves, staffing, and then some ongoing professional learning. So if you can, just for a minute, this conversation around the vision for learning has to do with 21st century learning and what it is that we believe students need to know and do, teachers need to know and do, and more importantly, parents need to know and do. And one of the conversations we intend to have more extensively is the pathways have taught us all a lesson. That we didn't necessarily connect legislative action with what we were going to have to do in the schools, and a little bit of this has gotten away from us. So one of the conversations we want to have all this year is, all right, what is all the things they've done legislatively? What does that mean now? And how do we handle that? So this is, and even kind of put draft in terms of this, because these are conversations we want to have. Is that your understanding of what 21st century learning is? The next is a visual. And when you look at this visual, and we'll have conversations at just a work session on this, it talks about the fact of what are those skills kids are going to need to be successful. And if you look, it's core subjects in 21st century themes. Life and career skills, learning and innovation skills, information, media, and technology skills. And when you see those broad categories, those are the kinds of skills that are beginning to be a part of the pathway conversation. So what we have to be very mindful of is what post-secondary, how that and their goals and their vision will impact what we have to do in terms of K-12 education. So all of the steps are supports for us getting that done. And while we're not going to talk about all of it tonight, very specifically, we want to kind of cover some of the pyramid and some of the change work to highlight some of the things that we're trying to do. The next talks about those 21st century student skills. And I had a wonderful conversation on Friday with my student advisory group. And we did an exercise about how do you measure character? How do you know when someone is creative? How do you define collaboration? And, or always, kids have really good ideas about how I ask them, what would a person look like who does that? And what would a person look like who's not doing it? And the reason is that these are some of the skills that we're going to be held accountable for as we move forward with students. So not a lot of conversation, but just to let you know that this is looking at what they're expecting us to do in some of those categories. In particular, that part 2, the section 2, and then even going down into the third part of the pathways. So if you go to the next slide, this is familiar to people. We talked about this last week about the pyramid. And one of the biggest pieces, if you go to the next slide for me, Jennifer, where we are right now, and there are lots of tensions about where we are, if you look at where students are supposed to get support, 80 to 90% of the students are supposed to get support out of the regular classroom, up to only 1 to 5% of the students who need a more intensive personalized response. And we don't believe that this is universally understood internally, let alone externally. So I want to put it up there because those are part of conversations we're going to continue to have. If you look at the next slide, this is something that's a part of the work that Faye is doing, because it's one thing for us to say that kids ought to, and that families ought to, and that they ought to know when they, but if they don't, what impact does a child not having these supports have on the rest of our environment? So these are conversations that we're not going to have totally tonight, but we do need to talk about. But I put that up there because these are now some of the pieces of our work that we had not totally funded in the past. I don't have a number, but our intent is to use some special ed funding and some Title I funding to expand our counselors. Right now, we only have counselors at middle school and high school, and we don't have enough. The ratio is outrageous, but it's the same way across the state. But we definitely don't have counselors. Therapeutic counselors are very specific certification to look at those issues that impact students' ability to be successful academically. So we will be bringing forth a conversation around how we are going to use our current funding differently to increase the support we have pre-K through 12. The other part, if you look at the pathways, some of the expectations we're having for kids to be able to make some choices in elementary and middle school, we're going to have to be more aware of how we help students do that, but also how we help parents do that, and then what role teachers are going to play in helping that happen too. One of the most controversial parts that we've had is this concept of what are interventionists. Interventionists were a Title I concept, and they were intended to work very specifically with students who had gaps in their academic progress. And so part of what we had done with our funding is to fund interventionists out of general fund, because not all kids who are eligible for Title I services are in the 15 or 20 schools identified. There are students who could have those services throughout the district. Well, one of the things that we have not consistently been able to document is that that expense has actually closed the gap in terms of what kids need to do. So as we looked at the data over the last couple of years, we believe that yes, while we still are going to have interventionists in Title I, that some of the work we need to do with counselors to have kids ready to learn, plus at the same time, we have to give teachers tools and ways to address some of the issues within the classroom. Because we don't have enough, we weren't going to have enough, so we have to look at how we can have those services and use that funding differently. And the last thing is we are going after a Lilly grant, 2 million, Faye? About 2 million. Not for personnel, but that Lilly grant will help us figure out what is pre-K through 12 counseling. Because that, we believe, is one of the gaps that need to be in the district. On the next slide, all of this is just educational jargon, and we're going to have a whole session on what all of these mean. But these are all specific kinds of programs or supports or philosophies to help kids with the whole readiness to learn side. And one of the areas that we really believe we have to do a much better job of helping teachers and students and parents is around the brain research about how kids learn, and also trauma-informed, meaning how much do we know about the things that happen to kids when they're not with us that impact what happens to them when they're in the schools. So that's just up there as a reminder that those are the kind of things that we're working with.
Hey, Dr. Robinson, one question. You know, it just, when it comes to counselors, is there, you know, for example, we know there are shortages in finding teachers, especially in like math, science, and special education. So what about finding counselors? Is that any kind of a concern? I mean, I don't even know the answer to that question. But.
We don't, we've got IPFW, which has a good program. We have St. Francis that has a really good program. And as we're doing the research, I didn't realize there are like 4 or 5 different kinds of counselors. So we haven't flushed out which counselors we need where. But we even just mentioned the idea and got 6 applications in one day. So we think that we have 2 excellent schools. We also have in the past had counseling interns, so we have like a pipeline. Now, the intent is, and we're not going to be able to afford to have a counselor everywhere. So I think for the amount that we can afford, we are not worried that we'll be able to start this in the
Okay.
fall. And it also helps us with, if we get a real strong internship like we do, we'll have a pipeline.
So we don't know exactly how many we'll have at this point?
We got a ballpark, but I'd like to have a clear number, because as soon as I say that number and it's not right, but right after spring break, we'll know that number.
Where do you think our biggest need is? What level?
The real answer, especially for therapeutic, is all the way pre-K through 12. But one of the things that we were talking about today is that part of the reasons that kids fall further and further behind when they get in middle school and high school, and it's more difficult, is that we didn't take care of some of those issues when they were 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, because we didn't have some of the resources in elementary. So I can't sit here and say, because we were having that conversation today, it's pre-K through 12. But one of the other things that we want to look at is, do you work with families? Because right now, there are families that have kids in elementary, middle, and high. And so if we have a coordinated effort, the family's not touched 3 times. We're trying to figure out how to use what resources we do have. So that's why we're going after the Lilly Grant, because we're going to use that money to do best practices and what is the right thing to do. But I just need to tell you that this is a growing area that we in the schools need to be mindful of, especially when it gets in the way of kids being able to be successful. I am still concerned that with the pathways, we don't have nearly enough counselors at secondary. And so the thing that we wrestle with also is, because we don't have enough administrators either, counselors end up doing some things that aren't necessarily just strict counseling. So we're trying to work on that as a part of this. How do you free up counselors who have unreasonable caseloads to do the support? Now, that's something as we look at what we talk to legislators about, because every year they make noise about helping us with counselors, but there's no funding for that. And so as they put in place some of the pathways and some of the expectations, the counseling ratio is just out of control everywhere. We're not the only ones, but it hits us hard too.
And
So-
those kids are going to be making those decisions as a 5th grade. So those counselors aren't just in the secondary that we need for the pathways I'm talking about. And then you're talking about having the kids come to school ready to learn. And so you're talking about helping families. Obviously, if you're identifying a child who has a challenge, then you need. Are you talking about case managers then going out into the community? I mean, I know you've cited something at our last meeting that was showing that the counseling, the new counseling you're moving towards is working.
The therapeutic, we have right now
Yeah, that's
4.
it. You called it
We have 3.
therapeutic. And what grades or levels of children are they working with that
We
are
have
having the
3
success?
At elementary and 1 over at Cass, which is our, at Nebraska and at Anthus. But I think you bring up an excellent point from the standpoint of, we have right now in our buildings case managers and administrative aides. And part of what we're trying to make sure is that we're never going to have enough counselors for every building to have one. But what do we need to do in terms of the case manager, which is supposed to be like the parent, home parent kind of connection? Are there pieces of their job description that can be changed that aligns with what we're trying to do with counselors? So I guess the best way to describe it is that we're not going to have enough counselors to cover everywhere, but we see the readiness to learn side. What do we need to help the case managers? We do have them in every elementary school to work with the counselors so we have a wraparound service for students. And part of what the intent is the sooner we help kids with things that keep them from learning, the more flexibility we have at the high schools to offer courses or to do the kinds of things that right now we're having to use expenses in different ways. we're always going to have kids that need our help. You're never going to eliminate any of that. But it's unfair to say it's just in elementary. But being honest, if we fix some of the things that kids need to have addressed earlier, we're not repeating every single year trying to take care of it. So we're going to have the whole conversation with that Lilly grant. We've got some counselors at the building level. We've got over at Faith Center. And so we'll bring that to you, our PMOC, to talk about it. Because I know enough to be dangerous right now. We don't have the grant yet. But we're going to use that grant to do some work.
Okay, but what I'm asking, I guess, is if we're using resources to do the therapeutic in the hopes that you'll help the child overcome some of these traumas or whatever they're having to deal with that's interfering with their academics, you will see improvements in academics because we're
That's our
shifting
intent.
resources out of classrooms now.
Well, we're really not, because when I talk later, I'm going to tell you how many additional teachers over allocation we're placing in classrooms. So.
Okay, good, that'll
Yeah.
be helpful
But-
to understand.
So the part is, we didn't take resources out of classroom. The resources we looked at were interventionists who were not classroom teachers. So we did not touch any classroom resources to have this conversation around the coaches. The interventionists were not classroom teachers. Okay? So I'm
Well, we
glad you
still
asked
have
that question.
interventionists, they just have additional responsibilities or shifting responsibilities.
Now, ask me that again, please.
The interventionist's role is changing, but we still have interventionists?
We have them as a part of Title I funding because they're a requirement of Title I. We had expanded them because there are Title I students in buildings that are not Title I. So we are now using the funding we had used for that for the counseling, but we are not taking resources out of classrooms for the counseling conversation.
Okay, and so because the interventionists are a requisite of the Title I, they stay in place where
Yes.
they are Title I funds?
Yes.
And students?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
so we're not losing them?
No,
Okay,
because we can pay for them out of Title I,
and then the
and they're
others,
required to be a part of that.
when you had expanded it to the non-Title I, those will be shifted into the counseling then?
And,
Is that
and
right?
what we had done, because you can't mix federal funds and general fund, we gave everybody an interventionist out of general fund, and they could get an extra one out of their Title I funds. Because if you don't pay for them out of general fund, they can't use Title I. So we eliminated the general fund, which means now the cost can shift back to title funds. So that's you can't supplant is what they call. So that's why there was a reduction, because we stopped using general fund for that purpose.
Okay,
Is that helpful?
yeah,
Okay.
that's great.
All right, so moving on. Won't really do a lot of conversation. These are three topics. I really want to get to the two of them very specifically, the Dana Center, but I want to get to the GE Electric Works project, and then I want to get to some of the other topics. We shared this slide as a part of the work session, and it's conversations we've had before about our focus on really curriculum, very specifically language arts and math. And if you look at the next slide, it very specifically talks about what we intend to do year 1, year 2, year 3. And notice we're not trying to do K-12 in one subject in 1 year. And part of that is it's a load to try to do language arts and math. So this is information that we share. We haven't really changed that part. But what I want to get to very specifically is we had a planning session with Centerpoint, Dana Center Centerpoint. And what they provided us was a tentative scope and sequence for language arts. Scope and sequence is when you start in pre-K and you go to 12, and what is the order that the standards are taught. But the really powerful piece of what they gave us had to do with resources teachers could use to differentiate, to teach what they need to teach for their grade level. So when we get those in the hands of a committee of teachers, because we're going to have a committee of language arts teachers and a committee of math teachers, we'll have them come talk to you about what it looks like. So just to show it to you without having the teachers tell you how they would use it, but just know we are moving ahead, and Dana Center and Centerpoint have delivered on what they said we would need to do planning with teachers this summer. We're in the process of working with the Teachers Association. We have a job description for the teachers who will write it. We have a process. The only thing right now is we're negotiating with Teachers Association pay. But that's something that quickly we'll be able to have a conversation with. The next part is, stay on that for me. This I really want to cover. Math causes adults angst. And as we were talking about the math portion, we've got some elementary teachers that are all upset that we're going to be expecting them to jump right into higher level math next year. So I wanted to very specifically point out that our focus is going to be 5 through 7. Because when kids leave elementary and enter middle school, some of the scheduling we are doing and some of the focus on math in middle school. So we specifically, before teachers are out this year, we will be working with teachers of grades 5 through 7, math teachers. We also have PL planned this summer, but this is like a commercial. We're not trying to have everybody start teaching math at the same time, because they don't have the resources yet. So very specifically, that's just something I wanted to say out loud.
Dr. Robinson, a couple parents have asked me if we know how we're going to structure this math for grades 5 through 7 in the middle school. Because their concern is right now we have the general math class and then we have the accelerated, and they're wondering are those separations and distinguishments going to go away in the middle school?
No, they are not. One of the things that I kept trying to say, and I will repeat it again, we're bringing the kids who are needing to have more rigor up, and the ones at the top, we are pushing them higher. So when I get to the back, I will explain that we have added teachers specifically so that what we currently have does not go away. So very specifically, we have put additional teachers, in particular in math, but some schools got other teachers to make sure their language arts did not suffer, and that what we have currently does not go away. So when I get to that point, I'll reiterate that again.
Thank you.
Now, in terms of schedules, normally schedules aren't totally complete for a teacher until almost before school is out. We intend to be working with principals and counselors this Wednesday, but schedules in terms of handing schedules out, that won't happen until after spring break, because we are still figuring out allocations. We gave principals allocations last week, and this Wednesday, we're going to work on what's that look like. So after spring break, and we'll announce when that is, we'll have a much better idea of what that all looks like. We've talked about this too. These are all some related projects. One of the things that I think is not really stated here, but we brought it to the board. We have several full-day pre-K. One at Bunch, the other at Whitney Young, and I think we have a couple of Title I full-day pre-K that we are piloting. The next slide talks about the Discovery Retreat, and I know several board members came on the 22nd. We had 69 people, and Discovery was thrilled. They said they'd never had that many community people show up. And it was just really to get people acclimated, but it was interesting that a lot of our community members said, okay, you didn't ask me for anything. What do you want to do? What do you want us to do? So I think that we've talked at Cabinet is we've got to circle back around, because there are some connections in that room that can help us. We had all kinds of folks, and I appreciate those of you that helped build the structure with the spoons and forks and knives. If you weren't there, it was an adventure, but I do appreciate board people, members being there. The next big topic is the GE project, and right now we're trying to figure out what is the next step, because what we have on these slides are just ideas. Faye's going to be representing the district, but also have obviously levels and curriculum. Tracy, all of us have some input in it,
But we see the GE project being absolutely essential to us as a way for kids to get internships and to have that pathway fulfilled. I've started some initial conversation with the other superintendents in Allen County, and we're going to sit and meet to see how, as a joint, we're all kind of working through this piece. So I have it up here because I think it's a wonderful opportunity. We had talked about it, but I don't have any more than we had last week. Just know that I have started trying to have conversations with other superintendents about it.
And just to be clear, when you say use the Anthus model, we're kind of talking about like half-day at your home school and then half-day at the Electric Works school.
Right.
Okay.
And good questions asked last week. This doesn't replace any program we have. So we're not moving new tech to the GE project. We're not taking Anthus and moving it to the GE project. We also don't intend for the kids to, we don't want to impact our enrollment in our current schools by moving kids out of one school to this school. But Anthus, those kids still attend their home school. To attract other districts, they're not going to want to give their kids up either. So those are all things that we're trying to figure out how that can work. We're also looking at asking the state, because the state has funded projects like this throughout the state. We have no money. We're not going after a bond. We're not cutting anything in terms of general fund. But this is just one of those opportunities for kids to have, when we're talking about pushing kids further, the opportunity to be in that kind of environment, it would be invaluable for kids who need another challenge. So just know that's on our radar. We'll come back as we try to figure out how we're going to maneuver this, because everybody else at the table is a player with money. We don't have money, but we have students, and we have students who could take advantage of that opportunity. So the last thing I want to kind of cover, we shared this arrow, Jennifer, you can go to the next one, how we process. And it's been interesting as I've talked to people in schools about some of the decisions that are reached. I don't think people understand how difficult it is to reach a decision in this district. We're a very large organization with an awful lot of people. And we force ourselves to go through a very strategic thinking process, because you can make a decision over here that has an unintended consequence over there. And one of the things that we know, based upon obviously a lot that's going on now, is communication is one of the things we don't do as well as we need to. And it's almost like the phone tree. This one says it and that one says it. And with Facebook, what is true or not becomes fact. And so part of what we're trying to do with having some of these conversations in public is to try to at least give people enough fact to go with. So I want to talk about organizing for success on the other one. Very specifically, you saw the moves we made for administrators, and you could read, as I was reading through their resumes, a lot of this is domino. And we encourage people to move for promotions. We also, as we move principals from buildings to buildings, we never assigned a principal to another building without some kind of process or their permission. No one is ever assigned to a building without willingly going. So that's all I'm going to say, because I'm not going to get into talking about administrative moves in public, but I think there's a misnomer that we just kind of say, tomorrow you go over there. There's a process, and people will never know all the things that we know, in particular I know. But those were all very deliberate moves for very specific reasons. I think the most probably misunderstood processes were the coaches and the interventionists. I've tried to explain the interventionist change. The interventionists worked with students, coaches worked with teachers. There was no intent for coaches to be reduced. As a matter of fact, I was even looking at more. But being very honest, as you went through a process to decide, we had to tell people there's a new expectation for your job. And so one of the things we've done in the past, when we've changed the expectation for a job, we've surplus people and had people reapply. I met with coaches last week. It was very emotional. I gave them an opportunity to tell me what worked for them and what didn't. Whenever you change somebody's job, no matter what you say, if they didn't get the job back, there's an issue. But I do want you to know that there was a very specific plan, and I did address with those coaches those issues. The interventionists, we knew from the beginning we were cutting back because I was taking away the general fund funding. And before any of this occurred, I had met with all of those people and explained all of that. But it doesn't much matter if it doesn't work for you. So I just wanted to say that out loud. I've talked to the coaches, I've talked to everybody, I'm talking to the administrators on Wednesday, because whenever someone in this district works hard and gets impacted, it's my responsibility to try to explain that to them. So I just wanted to put that up there when I'm talking about the administrative moves. We're also trying to work through where the folks go. We are not laying people off. We are not laying people off. We have enough places for people to work with kids. We are not laying people off. So I'll bring back what that looks like. I don't have it now, but I needed to say that out loud.
Dr. Robinson, could you also just briefly mention how when you have identified someone with a weakness or who is struggling, how we go the extra distance in order to give them the support they need in order to succeed. That way people can understand these are not knee-jerk reactions.
We had a very structured support system for coaches because they've gone through like 2 or 3 years of the Learning Forward had a curriculum. We did not have the same curriculum for interventionists. We were in the process of working through one. There is we call it a system of support. And everybody has a job description, and there's a rubric to tell you whether you're doing your job or not doing your job. So can I tell you that every single person was treated exactly the same way through that system? Well, that happens in the buildings. So I only can monitor what I can monitor. But I think for the interventionist very specifically, when you're cutting it in half, you already know half the people aren't getting their jobs back. The coaches, same thing. There's a rubric. We have all the tools to explain to people what their job should be. Now, part of my issue is whether administrators, leaders use those tools properly. So anybody that has any of those kind of concerns, we're trying to work through that. But the intent was decided using that change process. It wasn't just a random conversation. It was based upon what data do we have that this has had the impact we intended for it to have.
And we have those same support services for teachers and administrators as well.
The teachers have the RISE rubric. There's a very specific process that we use to evaluate teachers. Administrators also have the same. We, as a matter of fact, updated the administrators' rubric and the standards to be more in line with what we expect for administrators to do, the new ISLEAG standards that were passed. So I think we have a very extensive support system, and we say to people, you don't get evaluated until June. Every month up till June, you're supposed to be supported. And we have had no problems when we don't think that's occurring, deal with the person who didn't support. So I appreciate you asking me that question. But one of the reasons that we went to interviews is that the evaluations were not as discriminating as, you couldn't just say, well, let's just look at all these evaluations and rank everybody by evaluation. You keep your job, you don't. So that's not what we chose to do. We chose to give people an opportunity to explain their job. So we're still working through it. I'm trying not to out loud say a whole lot other than to know that I am well aware that this is a very, very sensitive subject, and it should be for people. People work hard in this district. But there was a rhyme and a reason to why we did what we did. And I'll say it again, nobody is being laid off. Schedules. Very specifically, I won't have a schedule to show you, but if you go to the next slide, I tried to put enough detail to kind of address what I have heard as some of the issues. We know that just looking at our data, math is an extremely weak area for us across the board when you look at what the new expectations are for the pathways. We also know that we have got to increase the number of math offerings at a higher level because universities are looking for kids to do higher level math just to get in. Kids who are going for post-secondary, it's at least 4 years of math. And universities are looking at AP courses and whether you pass AP test. So this is a generic slide just to show that we don't expect for people, we're not going to say to teachers do better. We're going to very specifically use the peer grant before school is out and in the summer and all next year. We have a 3-year plan to support, because if what we're helping teachers do isn't increasing student achievement, that's an issue. But the other things I want to say, when you asked me the question about cutting, we added 15 new teaching positions, allocations at middle school to make sure to get the math done. We didn't cut from anything else. Because next year comes science and social studies from the state. So it just keeps coming. And so we did not cut. And any school that was scheduled to be cut allocation, they kept the allocation, even if their enrollment was lower, because we knew of the challenge of trying to get these new things done. So if you look at the next slide, the 6th grade remains the same. 6th grade, whatever the process is this year for 6th grade is the same. But one of the things that we looked at for 7th and 8th grade, in particular, as we look at what happens with all kids taking Algebra 1 and those kids who are able to even take Algebra 2, geometry, whatever, we know that we didn't have teachers to teach that. So the additional resources is that wherever kids are this year, the intent is to push for more rigor, which means you can't do that with your current teacher allocation, because some schools may have to have Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and some kids even geometry. So the only change in the middle school schedule is a double period of math, and we don't just intend for the kids to sit there twice as long. We intend to do professional learning to how do you maximize that for the kids who have needs and for the kids who need to be accelerated. So that's why that whole conversation about 5, 6, 7, we just don't say do better. And that math double period is specifically for that purpose. Everything else is still single. And schedules are what they are. Okay? Now, let me go back. Courses aren't called honors in middle school. They're accelerated. That hasn't changed. So the intent is not to take kids who are accelerated and go backwards. That's why we added the additional resources. But those schedules haven't been put together. They just got those allocations last week. So the intent is to have additional resources to be able to do
Now,
it.
this doesn't mean that the middle school day is going to get longer.
There is no change to the day.
So is that an additional, so explain how that works.
But what I'd like to do is to show you, because I think it's like, Jennifer, 5 minutes
Okay.
maybe? Let us bring
Great.
your schedule, okay?
That's fine.
Because we're working on those on Wednesday. We are not allowed by transportation to change a minute of the schedule. Not going to happen.
Starting
Okay.
and end,
Start and
you
end.
mean.
Right. But we're working through, obviously teachers and plan periods and all of that. That's why I can't, I just needed to highlight this and to tell you what is not changing. Okay? On the next one, in high school. If you go to the second bullet, one of the misnomers is this career course. And it's being used as an allocation starting way back when we had high school redesign, and it is a requirement from the state. And we're looking at a way to fulfill the state requirement by how do you talk to kids about careers without using a teacher allocation, which we could use some other way. So we're trying to figure out how you get this requirement for careers done without having kids sit through a career course. Because as we talk to teachers and students, we're not quite sure if it had the impact that it needed to have. The other shift, and this is one that is just fascinating for me, the Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, it depends on how many math people you talk to. Next year, the shift in progression is Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Geometry, because by the time the kids start taking SAT to go to college, one of the areas that kids struggle with is if they haven't had enough math and had Algebra 2, they struggle on the SAT. So part of what our intent is as we get kids into more rigorous math, we know that the other reason we gave high schools allocations is there are math courses that I can't even pronounce that kids need to have advantage, access to get into universities where they want to. And even, it doesn't matter if you're going to be a welder or you don't intend to go to college, there are some needs for some of the higher level math skills that we've just got to make sure that kids understand that. So other than that, Algebra 1, 2, and geometry, and depending on who you are as a math person, you can argue that, and the careers. The only other thing in high school is no one lost an allocation. So there were a couple of high schools, our smaller ones struggle with that if they were to lose an allocation, we didn't take it. And if they needed additional allocation to do the math and the language, we gave it to them. So I don't know, Jennifer, if we have on here how many were added to high school, but when we talk about schedules, we can talk about that. But no high school or middle school lost allocation, and we very specifically added additional allocation. So when you look at the cutting of the interventionists and some of the other things we were funding, that was the pot we used specifically for that.
So the majority of kids will have algebra in 8th grade, algebra 2 in 9th grade, geometry in 10th grade.
And we have now some kids that already have had algebra 1, so they're going to have
In
the next
7th
level.
grade.
In 7th grade. So wherever they are now, the expectation is next year they're a level higher. Which is why you have to add allocation, because somebody's got to teach it. So all of that's being worked out, because the intent wasn't, okay, now you're all, whether you had it or not, going to be in Algebra 1. No, we're trying to get kids into higher level math. Now, one of the things that we talked about with Senator Cruz and Senator Zay is if you take algebra in middle school, it's an elective credit. So one of the things that we need to put on our agenda, but I think they get a credit for, is the biology. One of them. So there's no incentive for a child to do these kind of courses early if they're not going to get high school credit for it. And they get a credit, it's an elective credit, it's not like for their math. So these are some things that we got to kind of work through as we're trying to encourage kids to get into deeper and deeper math, and as their kids coming out of elementary and middle that could do more advanced math, they ought to be able to get credit for it. And right now they can't, other than as an elective. So if you go to the next, I think that's where I ended. All of these don't mean anything to you right now, but these are all professional learning systems that we're going to have this summer for teachers and administrators. We're going to have for coaches, because everybody's got to be ready for the start. And so it's a very busy summer. We have a 3-week period in July the 9th through the 27th. Teachers will be 3 weeks in a row, 4 days a week, working on curriculum. And very specific topics will be covered in different ways with teachers who are not a part of that. One of the biggest communities we're going to have is the math community, those teachers in 5th, 6th, and 7th grade. So we're trying to work through all those details with Teachers Association to figure out how all that's going to work. So couldn't cover everything, tried to tell you as much as I could. Our intent is to make sure that we know enough about schedules and where everybody is and who's got what job shortly after spring break, so that people can know where they're supposed to go. And more than that, also be a part of whatever professional learning we have planned. So, questions? There's a lot.
And teachers will get, when you talk about the professional learning from July 9th to the 27th, teachers are going to get paid for that. So, and that's what, you're still negotiating that, but.
All of that.
Which easily could take the place of, summer employment, correct?
And one of the things we're trying to do, and that's why so much is being done so quickly, people have to make decisions. And so we can't wait until June to make some of these decisions. You're not going to get teachers to commit to doing that. They have to know when are the dates, how much you're getting paid, what the expectation is. And so we're trying to work through all of that. And most of this will come out of that peer grant. And that's why we got it, so we'd be able to compensate teachers for the work that they're doing. So I appreciate, some of it was redundant, but I tried to add what new stuff we've done. And every time we'll try to update you on something as we keep working through. So, thank you.
Other questions?
I guess I just want to reiterate, or just nail down this one more time. We're going to have the longer math class in middle school so that the kids can get the rigor they're going to need to prepare them for taking the SAT once that's the format that we're going to have to be held accountable for. And, but the kids are not all going to be grouped into one class during that 104. There's actually going to be the distinguishment between the advanced, accelerated, and the regular math levels in middle school.
If a child already is in advanced math, they're usually in a class together, so they would move as a class together to whatever that next level is. But it doesn't matter where they are now. We intend for kids to be able to get an honors distinction in a class, even if it isn't an honors class. What is rigorous work that gets you that designation? So we have classes now where kids are in, there are not honors classes in middle school. They're
Right.
accelerated.
They're accelerated.
So if they're in an
advanced.
accelerated class now, they'll be in an accelerated class next year.
Okay, but if you're in a regular math class and you do the work for the honors distinction, you'll still get the recognition and credit for it? Is that what
Absolutely.
you're saying? Okay, so they won't miss out
No.
either if they're able to do the work?
No.
So, interesting.
And our intent is to accelerate more kids.
Sure.
Okay. So some people were concerned we were going back on our word. No. From day one, it was we were increasing the rigor for kids. We are not changing what we did this year for the kids who were in those classes. But all the work we're doing with adults and with kids is everybody needs to ramp it up. And there even needs to be more rigor for the kids who are in the accelerated classes.
And then we're not losing our AP classes or anything like that?
We're not
at the high
losing.
school level?
That's why we added additional, because the AP classes is what gives kids honors, gives kids college credit.
Right.
The work we need to do now is to make sure they take the test. Because if they take the test and pass with a 3, 4, or 5, they get college credit.
Right.
So we are just ramping up what we do with everybody, including some professional learning for teachers who teach honors. And most of the teachers who teach AP already go in the summer and are trained. So we've done a pretty good job of training AP teachers. We've not done the same thing with teachers of honors because there was not a definition of what kind of training that is. So we're looking into what that looks like too.
Okay, now could you just speak a little bit about the funding for those AP tests and the SAT test, I guess? In the past, the state just gave us ISTEP, but now SAT would require the funding to come from the individual?
Only heaven knows.
Only heaven knows.
And part of, and I wasn't trying to be flip when I say that. I mean, there are so many pieces to what the state is requiring. An AP course, an AP test is $94. So I think the reality we're going to have to face is as we're trying to encourage kids to do more and more, what's that mean? And sometimes kids don't take the test because they can't afford the $94. So I don't have answers right now, but I think shame on us if we aren't encouraging kids to get that, because that's college credit that you don't have to pay for when you go to college.
That's a huge savings.
That's a huge savings. So I think there's still not a lot of answers for everything, but I just want to be clear about the direction we're trying to head. Because at the end of the day, the pathways aren't going away. I have no idea what the accountability system will look like after next year. I have no idea what they're going to do initially with those pathways, But you all saw, the 3 sections are still there. They haven't taken any words out of those sections. Now, having said that, I had a legislator say, stop saying, blaming the pathways for what you're doing. And they're right. This is the right thing to do. That's what our moral purpose says. We're supposed to be increasing the rigor and expecting more out of everybody. Now, the pathways are going to make it hard for kids to graduate, but it's on us to make sure that we have increased the rigor and given kids a chance to do that at a high level.
But, you know, you do bring up a good point for, like, you know, for those of you who are into addressing concerns with the State Board of Education. If they're going to require kids to take the SAT, then they better pay for it. If you can take the ACT to graduate, then they ought to pay for it. If you can graduate by passing the ASVAB, then they ought to pay for it. If you can graduate with an industry certification, then they ought to pay for it. Because if they don't, then that's changing the rules of the game. Because up to now, whatever testing was required by the state to graduate was all paid for by the state.
But we will share research also that says the absolute worst thing to do is to use the SAT, the ACT for graduation. There is no research anywhere that says that makes sense. So part of what we need to keep saying out loud, those who want to continue to talk with the State Board of Education, why? There is no research that says that should happen. It's a sorting test to decide if you're going to college. It makes no sense for us to do that. And then you add the expense of it. So, other questions of me? It never ends.
You know, you said in the past that everything's going too fast. Is that still the case?
It is, and part of our problem right now is we're moving fast. And we always stop and think. We have conversations every week about what we can stop doing. I want to remind people that the current 7th graders are going to be under the new system. That means in the fall, the 8th graders are under the new system. I'm not waiting until they're in high school to go, oops. So the speed of some of the changes and some of the things we're examining, we also spend a lot of time looking at data. And one of the things that we try real hard not to do is to equate emotion with data. So either we're doing a good job in something or we're not. We're meeting the pathway expectation or we're not. And I think we do a great job in this district. But I think that the reality has to be, what are the barriers that are keeping us from doing better? And what I'm supposed to do is to recommend to you, okay, we've been doing this. This is not what we see. These are the issues that everybody's telling me we have, like the whole conversation around counselors. So we need to do something. Because when they finally decide how they're going to do A to F, trust me, they won't worry whether we were ready or not. And one of the things they intended to do for A to F is look at our science and social studies test scores. Oh, joy. So, thank you.
Okay.
It's happening quickly.
If there are no other questions, then Glenna, you want to begin member comments, closing comments?
Well, I had the opportunity to go to the Discovery presentation the other day. And again, as Dr. Robinson has already mentioned, we had great attendance from community members and a lot of fun projects, just to kind of a throwback to, for me, it was kind of like a throwback to some of my early art classes in elementary. But the main thing is, it was just a fantastic show of community support. Hats off to Get and others in her team who put that together, and had a lot of fun laughing. It was just really enjoyable, and I hope that the effects of some of these changes will get down to the classroom level so that the kids will enjoy learning science and even math and some of these other classes as we make these changes.
I'll second everything she just said.
Yeah, I also got to attend the Discovery Education kickoff. It was a lot of fun to see what the students and the teachers will be getting the opportunities to do here soon. And thank you to all the community members that came. It was great to interact with them and build towers out of spoons and forks and again, laugh. And Dr. Robinson mentioned it, but, and I echo it entirely. We want our students to love learning and have fun learning. And I believe that the direction that we're going will give our students the opportunity to love learning and have fun doing so. So, thank you.
I just wanted to thank Mr. Christner at Portage. I visited Portage last week, and it was an evening activity for current students who did some math things with using Legos to find volume, area, and perimeter. And then they had for incoming students, for 4th and 5th graders, they had a Percy Jackson event following that where they basically went all around the building, and so they got familiar with the building, but at each stop they got to do some kind of Percy Jackson activity. And it was just a really great evening. I was very impressed with both the activities. You know, I was told the principal that I'm old school and I can do the math on a piece of paper, but to actually use the manipulatives to do the math, like I kept having to ask him, I need help. Can you help me with this, moving these Legos the right way? It was just such a different experience for me, but in reality, I think it's better because it's more realistic. You're learning, you know, what volume looks like and what perimeter looks like and things like that, having a visual to help you with that. And then I visited Kikianga today with Mr. Schiebel. Thank you for having me. Again, you know, when I was in school, we had rows of students and desks, and the teacher was up at the front lecturing, and, you know, it was just completely different. We saw students in small groups, students working one-on-one with a teacher, all different types of learning going on, and just very impressed at what I saw at Kikianga today, so thank you for that. And just a reminder, if you haven't already, I hope you will join us to see Backpack Full of Cash. That is at Ivy Tech, 8:30 a.m. on April 14th. There will be food. You can sign up for that on Eventbrite, or you can just, I'm sure you can find it if you do a Facebook search for Backpack Full of Cash. I got to preview the film today, and I'm sure, Julie, nothing is new to you in that film. But most of it took place, they talked a lot about what was happening in Philadelphia. So we will have a panel of speakers. Karen Francisco, who we are all fans of, will be one of the people on the panels. And some of the questions we will ask is what we see going on in Philadelphia, how is this impacting Indiana? What kinds of things are happening in Indiana in our education system? So I think it'll be a great eye-opener for a lot of people. Julie, you might get bored, but I'm sure you've seen this, you know what's going on throughout our country and our state with corporate takeover of education. But anyway, I hope to see many of you there on April 14th.
Dr. Robinson?
I hope most of you had an opportunity to read Phil Downs' guest editorial in Sunday's paper. And one of the things that we're blessed in this community is the four of us in Allen County kind of look out for each other and talk to each other and share information. And that was a labor of love for Phil, because most people think that only Fort Wayne Community Schools is impacted by vouchers. And what the article showed is that the pot's the pot, and that the pot is being divided up, and communities are being impacted, and they don't stop to think about it. So I think, you know, those are topics that, even though we are knee-deep into vouchers, and our federal Secretary of State has made it no secret that she'll intend to continue that, but I hope everybody looks at the dollar and cents of that report. The other part is what some of the tax credits and some of the other perks that are given to people who send their kids to private schools that are not afforded people in public schools. So I just want to publicly thank Phil Downs for that. Kathy had to listen to him several times and gave him some input, but that was a labor of love for him because he wants people to see the impact that's having. So if you haven't read it, I encourage everybody to do that.
I agree, and I would like to thank Phil Downs and congratulate him on what a wonderful article that clearly showed how it affects every district. And most telling to me were, the comparison of, the consumer price index, that inflation over the last 8 years has been about 14%. Funding for education in Indiana is a little over 11%. The per-student tuition support, which is what all public schools get to educate students, was just over 7%. So you can see we're being asked to do more with fewer resources. Whereas money spent just generally for the government in Indiana went up 56% over those 8 years, and money spent on economic development went up 116%. So if you're going to spend all that money on economic development, but you don't spend it on educating the workforce, there's a little bit of a, to me, there's a little bit of a disconnect there. Hopefully our legislators will see that. And just in the whole discussion about math and math curriculum and things, this is just my little op-ed. I read a really interesting book last year. It's called Little Soldiers. It's about a woman who she's American. She was educated in American public schools. She's of Chinese descent. Her parents came from China. And she and her husband moved to Shanghai to take jobs, and they educated their kids there. And it was a very honest and realistic comparison between American education and Chinese education. And there's pluses and minuses to both. And I don't want to get into all of it, but the biggest thing that I took away from it was that she said you would never, ever hear a Chinese parent say, oh, I can't do math, so it's okay if you can't do math. Or, oh, you're never going to have to use that. Math's not important. So as we begin this new educational journey in Indiana, I would just encourage parents to be positive. Support your child in a positive manner as they're maybe studying topics that, maybe for them they're learning it in 6th grade and you learned it in 8th grade. I hope, and I've mentioned this before, and I hope we do some classes for parents, so that if parents want to know more about the math that their students are learning, that we provide them an opportunity to do that. And I would, again, I would love to be a part of that.
She volunteered.
And for those of you, again, who are concerned about, we heard, I think last week, that some of the State Board of Education met and decided they kind of wanted to put a pause on A to F accountability. Now, whether that actually happens or not, we don't know. Do you know, Ann, has that official public comment period closed on?
That I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but you, if you have concerns, and my concerns include the fact that they are no longer going to use growth for high schools. That's a huge concern. They're probably going to require every student to take the SAT, every student. they're capping growth, which means, previously, the last couple of years, you could get like extra credit on growth if your growth was really, extraordinary. Well, now, they're going to cap that. In elementary school and middle school, they're proposing to also use the science and the social studies tests for 8F grades, which means now more tests are important rather than just the 2. And I haven't heard yet any talk about what they're going to do with the required high school science test. Have you?
Because they don't have one.
I know, nothing. So those are all concerns of mine, and if those are your concerns too, you can go on the, you can just do a search for Indiana State Board of Education, and you can certainly email the members of the State Board of Education individually. And other than that, this is a 4-day week?
Yeah.
And spring break next week, right?
Right, and could I
In fact,
ask
the
them-
State Board of Education meets next
Yeah.
week.
I was going to say that.
They meet on Wednesday, April 4th. And like I said, the previous meeting, which, was it a work session, or I don't know, they didn't have the complete board there. They talked about pausing on making a decision to 8F accountability, but you never know. So that will be discussed at the Wednesday, April 4th meeting.
I think the simplest thing to keep saying is why? Why are you doing that?
Right,
Why are
where's
you
the
changing?
research?
What's the purpose? And they do notice. You don't have to try to think you have to write a lot. It's the whole accountability. Why? Why are you changing it? Why the SAT? And just make sure that you say who you are and tell them where you have a child.
Yeah, tell them you're a parent.
'Cause they
Tell them,
need to
share your
hear-
story if you've,
Yeah.
if you can envision how your child, or maybe how an older child would be impacted,
And the interesting part is that's almost every district in the state's on spring break. So you're making a decision potentially this important when you know that there's nobody on spring break. Nobody there. Anyway.
Okay. Seeing no other comments? And then we'll take public comments after we adjourn. So do we have a motion and a second to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Ann. Thanks, Maria. All those in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, and so I've got 3 people signed up to speak, but anyone is welcome.